All right, welcome everybody to today's ISES webinar. We are very pleased to have all of you here, and we are especially happy to have the International Energy Agency Solar Heating and Cooling Task 57 speaking to you today. The IEA SHC Solar Academy has been a great contribution to the ISES webinar a few times this year already, and we have already set dates for 2019 for them to join us again, which we are really looking forward to. Today's webinar will present the IEA SHC Task 57 on the topic of solar standards and certification, and we have a total of 5 speakers and moderator joining us for the webinar today. For this, today's webinar will last 1.5 hours and will of course include a Q&A section after the presentations. My name is Arabella and I am the Communications and Outreach Officer here at the ISES HQ in Freiburg, Germany, and I will give you a short introduction into ISES and the work we do, as we have many new participants joining us on the webinar today. The International Solar Energy Society ISES is a non-profit UN-accredited membership NGO. Our mission is 100% renewable energy for all, used efficiently and wisely. ISES represents a diverse membership of academics, researchers, energy practitioners, consultants, students, businesses, and advocates. ISES works together with like-minded organizations from all around the world to advance the renewable energy transformation. There are many benefits to joining ISES, which you can find on our homepage. Some of the benefits are the exclusive access to presentations and webinar recordings. ISES members can also get discounts and free registration to ISES events and partner events. Every month, ISES publishes a newsletter for our members where you can follow our progress and share your news. Members can also subscribe to our academic journal Solar Energy, our flagship publication. And in the ISES online bookshop, ISES members qualify for reduced prices on different publications. So we welcome those who are not yet members to join today to support our work. For those who are already a member, we thank you very much for your support. Now, I want to introduce you to our moderator, Shawn Martin, who will take over from me in a second. Shawn is a mechanical engineer with a wide range of experience in research and development, product design, primarily focusing on constructing technologies. And Shawn is the technical director at the Solar Rating and Certification Corporation Certification Program. Shawn will shortly introduce the IEA SHC Solar Academy, our speakers, and he will also moderate the Q&A. For the Q&A, here are some brief information before we start with the presentations. For the Q&A section, we invite you to send in your questions and we are looking forward to your participation. When sending in the question, please write who the question is for and keep your question short and precise. Please feel free to start sending in your questions anytime throughout the webinar. Now I'm happy to hand over to Shawn, who will introduce the webinar and our first speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Arabella. So can I confirm that you're able to see the screen?
Confirmed.
Yes. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce the SHC Solar Academy to you. This webinar has been organized by the International Energy Agency Solar Heating Program, and it has been hosted by ISES, as Arabella has noted, and I want to extend our thanks to Arabella and the work of ISES to help organize this session. I would encourage you to visit their websites for more information on both the SHC and ISES. So just a few brief words about the SHC program. It's the first of what are now over 40 implementing agreements at the IEA. The group works to advance solar technologies and their applications to building for heating and cooling. As you can see on this map, there are over 20 member countries plus the European Commission, and 5 sponsor organizations which cover an additional 47 countries. The goal of the SHC program is to increase the deployment of solar heating and cooling systems, and it does so by promoting collaborative research and knowledge exchange. And as we'll hear today, the SHC program has a number of multi-year projects we call tasks. We'll focus on task 57 today, which covers solar standards and certification. However, there are quite a number of others that you might consider learning more about on the website. For example, application of PVT collectors, a task on daylighting, solar energy for industrial water, material and components, a wide range of topics. So I encourage you to take a look at more of the tasks that we're involved in. So a little bit more about what the Solar Academy is about. It is, in a few words, knowledge exchange. The program seeks to both conduct research, but also to coordinate the exchange of knowledge between stakeholders within the industry around the world. And it is carried out a number of different ways. First of all, we have webinars by SHC experts on specific results and tools. These are usually hosted by ISES. We have videos highlighting the SHC's work and other relevant issues that you may wish to take in. We have national days for the exchange of information between experts, and on-site training, which is available upon request. I should note to you that these particular webinars are carried out quarterly. I believe the next scheduled webinar is set for the 21st of March in 2019. And the topic of that next webinar will be the integration of large-scale solar heating and cooling systems into district heating systems. And of course, if you're interested in more information, there's a significant amount that you can find on the web. I encourage you to visit the SHC Program's website, and you can also follow their activities on social media, specifically Twitter and LinkedIn. So with that, I will introduce you to today's webinar. We will have a number of excellent speakers today, and I will have the opportunity to introduce them individually. They'll be focusing primarily on both SHC Task 57 and its subtasks, and I'm very pleased to be able to introduce the speakers to you today. So without any further delay, we'll begin with our first presentation. Our first presentation will be provided by Jan-Erik Nielsen. He is the operating agent for Task 57. He's also the manager of the Global Solar Certification Network and the manager of the Solar Keymark Network. And I think many of you who know Jan-Erik know that he has been involved in the development of the Pan-European certification scheme, Solar Keymark, from the beginning. His involvement is very deep and his knowledge is superb. So I think you'll all enjoy hearing from Jan-Erik. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Jan-Erik.
Thank you very much, Shawn. So I will try to give you an overview of the task, and let me see. Here we are. So this task 57 is on solar standards and certification. I will give you an introduction and also a little more into subtask B, a summary of that, and then in the end I will present some perspectives and some maybe political statements on this subject. So this is the frame. So it has been a 3-year project ending now by the end of this year. It is a follow-up to a former task 43, solar rating and certification, which was running for quite a long time, 6 years. And there is this website. So I'm the operating agent, and then it's divided into 3 subtasks. The subtask A, which is to kick off the operation of the Global Solar Certification Network, conducted by Harald Dryk. He will be the next presenter. Subtask B, improvement of test procedures, support and input to ISO. This was done by He Jinan. He was unfortunately not able to participate today, so that's why I also give a summary of subtask B. And then we have subtask C, promotion and capacity building with respect to ISO standards and state-of-the-art certification schemes. And this subtask was led by Ashab Grady from RICRE, and his colleague Kalib Salmi will present subtask B today. So just very short on subtask A. So it was to kick off the Global Solar Certification Network, which should be a help or will be a help for the international trade of collectors and hopefully other solar thermal products. So we try here to make a framework so we can avoid retesting and recertification and re-inspection on the different market. And so this is a network, and it's made up by industry representatives and certification bodies, test labs and inspectors, and also some supporting members from all over the world. And actually we, in the end, did succeed to kick it off. So now it is working. So manufacturers can now take their test reports and inspection report from one certification scheme area and go to another certification scheme and have the stamp using these existing reports. But Hendrik will tell you more about that. There is a website which is gscn.solar. So then there's subtask B, improvement of test procedures, support and input to ISO. So there is an ISO technical committee for solar energy, and we are trying to assist them maintaining and developing new standards. And there was produced within the task 3 new drafts proposals from China, and this is test methods for mechanical load of support of close-coupled solar water heating systems. So this is this typical Chinese system with the collectors and tank very nearby each other. And then there are test methods for requirements for building integrated collectors and systems. So how to put collectors and system into buildings in a sensible way. And then again, for close-coupled solar water heating systems, we have test methods for reliability and safety. You can check these proposals out from the website and download them from there. Then we have one draft proposal from Denmark, and this is on large collector fields, which we have a lot of in Denmark for district heating. And this is a proposal for a procedure how to check if these collector fields are performing as they should. So this is about verifying the performance of the large collector fields, and it's quite a wide scope. So it's valid for flat plate collectors, evacuated tube, and also tracking focusing collectors, and for all sizes of collector fields. This is has now been brought to the ISO technical committee, and we will together develop a final procedure. You are most welcome to participate. Then also in subtask B, there was some interesting work on accelerated aging testing of collectors. We have a report from China with some measurements and a proposal for a procedure. And actually we saw here that the influence of aging is seen in some cases on the performance of the collectors. There's been some German projects presenting their results to the task, so-called SpeedCall project and SpeedCall 2 project. And you see here the websites, and they give a lot of information. And this is for the flat plate collectors, and here we see in general little influence of aging, so far at least. And then there was a survey on what is called here environmental extreme conditions, so to see what is considered as extreme conditions for also PV modules, and trying to harmonize the discussion and definition on these extreme conditions. So that was subtask B. Then shortly on subtask C, we have guidelines on the new collector test standard 9806, and we have here Corbinian to present this today. This is a very nice document to my understanding, and we have some guidelines for making up new certification schemes in maybe regions where you are not so used to work with certification. And then there was a document analyzing answers to some questions on this new collector standard. So those people implement it in their country, and what do they think about it, and do we miss something? And there was quite a nice positive response to this new standard. So then in the end, some perspectives for solar standards and certification. I'm working on a position paper which will come out during January, I hope. So this is all about harmonizing at international level the testing standards and certification scheme, and this will save very significant resources for product testing and certification and increase product quality. So it is an important issue. The status is that we have international standards, ISO standards for the testing, but we also have some challenges here to continuous update and adapt to the new technology, new products, and new requirements. And also we need to promote the use of the standards, so we use them, all of us. We have some well-established national and regional certification schemes. The work to be done here is to harmonize these certification schemes and establish new certification scheme where we need that. But doing this, we have some barriers actually. So in some countries, we have a lack of quality infrastructure. We need to work on that. And in almost all countries, I would say, we have some lack of resources for participating in the standardization work at national and also international level. And also maybe because of the lack of resources, it's difficult to get people to really take responsibility and do some work in this field. We have also, and this is important, a lack of industry participation. It's only a few industry who actually participate actively, and this would be very nice if we could have some more industry participation. Then in some countries, there is maybe a lack of interest in doing this harmonization because they think they can protect their domestic industry. And then there are some countries with quite specific requirements for test procedures due to special local conditions, which is not considered in the international standards, and this we will have to work on to include as much as possible the different specific conditions from countries all over the world. So that's for the standards for harmonizing the certification schemes. We have these barriers. So we have again a lack of industry participation. And also we can say that harmonization is maybe only interesting for the manufacturers working on a global or multinational level. There is some lack of interest in harmonizing the certification schemes from the national certification bodies, which are maybe afraid to lose some business. And then again, we have in some cases specific requirements in specific countries. So what to do? From the industry side, I think it would be very good if they could organize at a global level, so make kind of a worldwide industry association working on harmonizing the standards and the certification around the globe. And then again, so they should participate in the standardization and especially in this global solar certification network we have now in operation. And then they should put pressure on the test labs and certification bodies to use harmonized standards and certification schemes, and also put pressure on the national authorities to harmonize the requirements as much as possible. From the national authority side, to harmonize requirements, adopt international standards, and support the standardization work at the international level also. From the test labs and certification body side, they should use and accept international standards, participate in the ISO standardization, and participate in the global solar certification network, and put pressure on the national authorities to harmonize requirements. And then also maybe from international funding side, we need from them some support to do this work, because it's difficult to have national support. So a lot of things still to do. So we hope very much that this task will have a follow-up task next year. This is the plan, at least, so we can continue working in this direction. There are two websites. One is the specific task website, you see to the left, and then there's a website on the Global Solar Certification Network you see to the right. But yeah, we will be back on that. I think that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, we are handing over back to Shawn. There we go.
Okay, very good. So our next speaker, as was mentioned, is Mr. Harold Druck. Harold will be providing an introduction to the Global Solar Certification Network, which was mentioned by Jean-Eric. Harold Druck is the chairman of the Global Solar Certification Network. He was also the leader, is the leader of Subtask A, which was an effort to kick off the Global Solar Certification Network. Harold is from IGTE. For those of you who may not have been aware, that was formerly known as ITW/TZS, which was a consolidation that took place, and he's at the University of Stuttgart in Germany. And just on a personal note, I'm very proud that my organization, Solar Certification, SRCC, was approved as the first certifying body under the GSCN. So a little shameless plug there. So Harold, I will turn this over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Shawn. Hello to everybody. As already mentioned by Shawn, I have the honor to talk about the Global Solar Certification Network, and I have just to get my presentation started.
Yes, Arabella, quick question. I don't see Harold listed as a presenter. When I transfer it to you, I'm going to transfer it back to you. Is that appropriate?
We are right now. We can all see Harold's presentation. Thank you.
Very good.
So now I think you should see my presentation. And as I said, it's about the Global Solar Certification Network. And I can imagine you might ask the question, what is the Global Solar Certification Network about? And the Global Solar Certification Network is a worldwide cooperation between all stakeholders that are involved in global solar certification. And these are as the most important group, the solar thermal industry, then it's certification bodies, it's test labs, and it's inspection bodies or inspectors. And all these target groups are members of the network. Furthermore, we have supporters. I will be back to this later on. And the aim or the aims of the network is to facilitate worldwide cross-border trading for solar thermal products with a certain quality level, to avoid retesting of products and also the re-inspection of production lines when a company is entering to a new market. Of course, this means also to save cost and to increase the quality of the products. And as a result of this, this will of course lead to larger markets, and if you have larger markets, you have lower prices and you have a better business. And of course, we also have more solar collectors on our roofs and save more energy and avoid more CO2 emissions. So the method that is behind all these global solar certification activities is that we base our certification on existing certification schemes. That means we did not start to develop a new global solar certification scheme. We just started to harmonize already existing certification schemes and to go for a mutual recognition of the test reports and of the inspection reports. And the concept that is behind this approach is that the reports for the products related to the test reports and the inspection reports performed by the inspectors or the inspection bodies, they have to fulfill the requirements that are specified in the Global Solar Certification Network working rules, and the testing and the inspection has to be done by labs and inspectors that are recognized by the GSEN. So you have to be recognized or approved by the GSEN in order to participate and benefit from the GSEN. And if this requirement is fulfilled, if the reports are harmonized, then it's quite easy. If you have a certification from a specific region, for example, like Solar Key Mark from Europe, and then if you would like to have the SRCC certification from Shawn Martin, and if all these reports fulfill the requirements and are harmonized, then it's quite easy to get this certification without additional retesting. And this means, of course, you save time and you save money as a manufacturer. So here it's again written in a bit more detail. So it works based on a mutual recognition of test and inspection reports based on the third-party certification schemes. And key elements of this are initial type testing of the solar collector and surveillance testing of the collector. And then we also have an initial inspection of the factory production control. And in the next step, it is also required that all operating bodies are accredited for their relevant activities. That means, for example, test labs have to be accredited according to ISO 17025. Certification bodies have to be accredited, and also the inspectors or inspection bodies have to be accredited. Up to now, global solar certification is limited to solar collectors because solar collectors are the most easiest solar product. They are more or less similar all over the world. There are not that big differences as they exist, for example, for different types of solar thermal systems. So as a first step, we started with solar collectors, and solar collectors have to be tested according to the latest version of ISO 9806, so the International Collector Testing Standard. ISO 9806 latest version was issued in 2017. And now it looks a bit complicated, but in principle, it's quite simple. You have the test lab that issues a test report based on a collector coming out of the production and using the latest version of ISO 9806. Then you have the inspector that performs the inspection of the production line, also issues an inspection report, and all these reports, the test report, the inspection report, they are sent to the certification body. As already said, all key actors, test lab, certification body, and inspector have to be accredited by an accreditation body. And then you get your certificate, and if you would like to have certificates from other certification bodies like SRCC or IAPMO or Chinese certification bodies, then you just send them the harmonized test report, the harmonized inspection report, and then you are able to get a certificate from other certification bodies based on other certification schemes without retesting. So all this was achieved and organized by the Global Solar Certification Network. And now the question is, how is the Global Solar Certification Network organized? It's organized in a way as typically larger networks or structures are organized. That means we have a board the board consists of a chair, a vice chair, a treasurer, and a secretary. And then we have different working groups for certification bodies, for test labs, for inspectors, and for industry. And then, very important, because all is about testing and certification, and this all is also related to quality assurance. We have a so-called Global Solar Certification Network Quality Assurance Committee. That means in order to become a recognized member of the network, it is not enough that you are accredited. This is required, but it's not enough, because in some parts of the world you can get accreditation maybe more for money than for competence. And in order to have an additional quality control instrument, we have this Quality Assurance Committee. And this Quality Assurance Committee, this also checks if the certification body or test lab or inspector applying for membership also fulfills all the criteria set up by the network. And all this criteria and also the way how the network is structured is described in the Global Solar Certification Network Working Rules. They are also public available on the internet. And in order to organize all these activities, we have the Global Solar Certification Network Manager. And this manager is until the end of the year, Jan Erik. And from 2019 onwards, it will be Shawn Martin. And as already mentioned by Shawn, I am the chair of the Global Solar Certification Network. So, as I said, our aim is to enlarge the market for solar thermal products, to reduce prices, and price reduction is also to a certain aspect influenced by the cost for testing and certification. And what you can see here is just the calculation as an example how a lot of money can be saved by benefiting from the harmonization achieved within the Global Solar Certification Network. And if we assume we have a manufacturer with 8 different solar collectors and he's active in 3 global regions, then he has, without Global Solar Certification Network, to pay these costs that are listed here in yellow. And with the Global Solar Certification Network, costs are much lower. I will not go into details. I will share the presentation after the webinar with you, so then you can look at the details. But what is important is that in the first year, he saves nearly 200,000 euros. And in each following year, he also saves around 6,000 euros. And this is, of course, quite an important saving for manufacturers. So, Global Solar Certification Network already exists in full operation 1 year, and then of course it took also several years to build it, and we already have some success stories. And I think the first success story is that the network is established, it's in full operation. We have already harmonized several testing, inspection, and certification procedures within different global solar regions. And we have also based or performed certification of solar collectors for different certification schemes in special solar key mark and SRCC certification for several companies, like for example Samlo Solar and Central Heating Systems, a company from Greece, or KBB, a German manufacturer, or Greenvantech, which is an Austrian manufacturer. So, what is the current status of the Global Solar Certification Network? We have a final set of working rules that is approved. And as I said, it's available in the internet. The system behind the Global Solar Certification Network is in full operation, and we have members from industry, from certification bodies, we have inspectors, and we have test labs. And as I said, for some members, it's not that easy to become a member. Industry, you have just to apply and pay the fee, then you are a full member. But for certification bodies, inspectors and test labs, we have this additional internal quality assurance procedure, and this is still running, and this is the reason why there are, for example, 6 certification bodies in the pipeline that would like to become a member, also 3 inspectors and 2 other test labs. They have just to be evaluated by the Quality Assurance Committee, and if the evaluation positive, then they will also become a member. So we are growing, but what is of course important is we have to do further promotion of the GSCN. This is one reason why we do this webinar today. And then we also need more members. So that means we have to acquire members. We will also start a big membership acquisition campaign beginning of next year. And just to give you some information about the fees that you have to pay to become a member or to stay a member, for 2019, it's around 200 euros for certification bodies, inspection bodies, and test lab. Industry has to pay a bit more. And then there are supporting members, which are private persons or organizations like the Solar Heat Europe Industry Federation or organizations like this. They have to pay 75 euros. So it's not really a lot of money. It's just the basic fee to keep the network in operation, to pay a bit of the expenses that occur within the network. So yeah, I think the fee is nothing that is really hindering somebody to become a member or some institution. So I would also like to encourage you all to participate because everybody can benefit, independent if he is from industry, if he is a certification body, a test lab, an inspector, or even a private person to support the activities. And to become a member, you have to go to gscn.solar, and then you can click on the member button, and then there is information provided how to become a member, and you can also see how the application runs. There is an application package you can download with the documents you should read, and also the application form you should fill out and send to the manager. And then you can also look at the list of members. So then you see the organizations that are already a member. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention and hope that many of you will become a member of the GSCN by next year. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Harold, for the excellent presentation. We have a number of questions for both you and Jean-Eric, which we will address at the end during the Q&A session. So next we will go to our third presenter. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Ian Kramer. Ian will introduce the supplementary guide to the latest version of the EN ISO 9806 standard, the 2017 version. And this was developed in the context of IEA Task 57. It's focused on the applying partners and those industries producing or installing solar thermal collectors, also test laboratories applying the standard and certification bodies. If you've not yet had an opportunity to review this document, I strongly suggest you take a look at it. It's excellent work. And Dr. Kramer is with Fraunhofer ISE. He's also a lecturer at the University of Freiburg, Germany, and in the master's courses for renewable energy management and sustainable system engineering. So with no further introduction, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kramer.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Shawn, for the friendly introduction. I assume that you all can see my screen now. As it was said before, I want to introduce to you a guideline which was developed in the context of the task 57 and supported from other sources of funding. And a first picture, it looks like this. So it's a guideline, it is like a booklet. There is a versioning already. So you can see there's a version 2.0, which is showing that it has been updated this year. If we have time in the question and answer section, I'm happy to tell about the differences, but I will skip that in the presentation for now. What is this guideline? How is this guideline structured? It is kind of a gathering of fact sheets to the standard ISO 9806 2017 version. The standard, as you might know, is a method test standard which describes methods for testing for performance characteristics, as there are like efficiency, incident angle modifier, pressure drop, so it's technical characteristics, but also comprising tests on function like internal thermal shock tests, external thermal shock tests. Those things are described in this 9806 2017 version. And as it is a standard, it's always tried to keep as small as possible in the description. And so a supplementary guide seemed to be a good idea. Sometimes the standard is also not easy to interpret, especially this is true when you're entering the, let's say, testing sector as a beginner. If you're opening a test laboratory, for example, then you might find it difficult to interpret all the chapters in detail. There is the intention not to generate a parallel document to the standard. What do I mean by saying that? A standard is revised from time to time and so on, so you don't want to have duplications in descriptions in other documents, otherwise it's hard to keep it consistent. So it is only citing and referring to the method description in the standard, but it's not trying to duplicate what the standard is giving on information. At some little pieces, this is not easily possible. You will find that in the guideline. There is some, of course, repetition of, for example, boundary conditions, but basically it's a supplementary document, not a duplicate. And of course, as we have been running a test laboratory for solar thermal products for almost 20 years now, there's a lot of experience which was generated during these years, and we try to share that with those fact sheets. So we tried to implement as much as possible our experiences into the document. Who should be the profiting parties from such a free of charge document? First of all, I think it's good for test laboratories, especially newcomers. Really hands-on people who have to apply the standard for collector testing and want to have like a quick start on that. I hope that it's also interesting and easy to read for manufacturers and importers of collectors, as it gives an indication, as we will see in some slides, also on their contribution to a smooth testing process. That's very important to understand, that the manufacturer is kind of involved into the testing process. Then for sure, certification bodies might profit from it, getting something like indications on typical results of specific tests. So if, as they have the job to evaluate test reports and hand over certificates based on these reports and the results. It's also for certification bodies may be helpful to know what typical result of specific test is. And last but not least, the regulatory agency, policymakers who want maybe to correlate their policies towards a certificate, and that basically including the test standard behind the certificate. They should also maybe understand what is an outcome of such a test so that they make a clever policy scheme. As I said, it's structured following the standard. This is just an overview on the table of content, as you can see. It gives some extra definitions which are not given in the standard, which are helpful. For example, how collector types are looking like, because the standard has a scope and it's just using some words to say for which collectors this standard applies. So we try to make an extra chapter with some pictures of those collectors and sorting them in a generic way, so that it's also easy to understand what is meant by those words. And of course, it also indicates the context of certification, because sometimes the rules of certification and technical standards are linked very closely to each other, and it's not so easy to keep, let's say, all the rules in parallel in the back of your mind when you're making an offer, for example, for a test. So in this very moment, you should be able to anticipate what is the rules of certification later you want to apply for with a test report. So you need to understand that upfront to make the test in the correct way. Let's have a short look on a sample. Just one sample, you don't have to read the text, of course, but how is it structured? We tried for every test to limit our on a double page. So it should be really brief and compressed information. There is, of course, the test headline. There's a little pictogram explaining the test, or indicating the test a little bit. Then, first of all, there is this flow charts. That's maybe the most important thing for the test laboratory. So it tries to give the flow patterns of such a procedure of those tests. There is always the boundary conditions box, so that's kind of a repetition, but maybe there's also some additional information of things which are taken for granted by the standard sometimes, but it's maybe worth mentioning. So we try to make an information box on how to set the boundary condition. What I mentioned before, there is some experience in this fact sheet, so there's some tips and tricks. If you really do hands-on work, sometimes you need to know a little bit about how those tests are reacting, how the products are reacting, and you can read that here. And then, of course, as I mentioned, for a smooth testing process, it's very important that the manufacturer is interacting with the test laboratory, for example, and also it's important that manufacturers are aware that they have some choices when setting up testing procedures. So in some tests, they have to make upfront decisions telling the test lab what to do. For example, choosing the climate class they want their collector to be tested against. Those informations are highlighted here, so it's only 2 sentences, but easy for a manufacturer to double check where he can influence the testing. Last but not least, there is some exemplary results given with some pictures, just to indicate how these tests can result. One more flowchart in a little bit, let's say, easier to read. That's how it looks like, and you see that there is this green colored boxes. That's always indicating when there is a manufacturer's definition needed to start. As I just mentioned, here in this case, it would be that the manufacturer has to give the climate class conditions from this table of the ISO as a starting information for the test laboratory. Otherwise, the test laboratory doesn't know, doesn't start, or just choose one, and that might be later a discussion. Another focus on a typical example for results, for example here on the standard stagnation temperature, we just indicated different product types and what classically, typically are results for standard stagnation temperatures for those products. So it's of course just the orientation, but you can maybe be quicker with this information than by finding out. That's what I wanted to show to you today. And as said before, you can download that presentation free of charge. We will keep an eye on that in the versioning. So whenever you find something not correct, something not well explained, you made experiences you want to share, I highly invite you, to send me some comments. Be most clear with what you think should be changed. You just send that to my address, which you can see also in the presentation, as it will be shared later online. And then, of course, I will maybe come back to you to incorporate your feedback to update the version. I think we will update the version something like in a yearly routine, if there is no urgent need. And with this, I think I hand back to Shawn.
Very good. Thank you for an excellent synopsis of that. And I believe it's important to note that that is indeed available online for download, I believe free of charge. So I would encourage you to access that document. Our next speaker is Mr. Khalid Sami. He'll be speaking on Subtask C and providing a report on that. He'll also be comparing a bit the SHC program with Solar Keymark. Specifically, that SHC is the Solar Heating Arab Mark and Certification Initiative. Mr. Sami is a mechanical engineer with a master's degree in renewable energy engineering. He is currently the SHC Network Secretariat, and he's his title at the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency organization is Standardization and Certifications Program Coordinator. And he'll be speaking about the different levels of solar certification, covering all countries worldwide. And as I said, we'll be focusing on a comparison between SHC and Solar Keymark. So with that, I will turn it over to Khalid, and we look forward to your presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Please confirm if you can see my screen now. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you, Shawn, for the nice introduction. I'm pleased today to take part of this valuable National Energy Agency Solar Heating and Cooling Program, mainly the task 57. I'm going to present some outcomes of the Subtask C related to the promotion and capacity building with respect to ISO standards and state-of-the-art certification schemes. Allow me first, please, to highlight that my intervention today will be on behalf of my colleague Ashraf Grady, who is the Subtask C leader and the SHC Program manager. Let's start with the objectives of the Subtask C. The Subtask C was initiated with mainly two purposes. The first one is to develop new version of ISO standards, and the second one is to establish at least two levels of solar certification schemes. So mainly the first objective was to promote the ISO standards for the solar thermal products throughout the globe, and to convince the different stakeholders that ISO standards are very well proven and useful, by providing guidance for them on how to implement those ISO standards, and to support them on creating or conceiving new certification schemes for solar thermal products. So within this subtask, or to achieve these objectives, so a questionnaire or survey has been elaborated and circulated for different related stakeholders worldwide, mainly the certification bodies and quality assessment bodies, to have some ideas on how, on how their interest in use of international standards. So to achieve these activities were performed. Several guidelines were developed. For example, the guideline on standardization and quality assurance for solar thermal products, and also a second guideline for implementing certification schemes for solar heating and cooling products. One of them, or for example, we developed a guide called Readiness Criteria for SHC, where it's mentioned many requirements and criteria that need to be fulfilled by the involved entities who are interested to adopt SHC scheme at the national level. Also, it was developed the first online training program on solar water heater certification was developed. It's retrievable on SHC website, www.shmc.net. The promotion also of those aspects was assured by the participation and attendance of several regional and international meetings and events worldwide, where many presentations and papers were presented to cover this part. Regarding to the survey, in 2017, a new version, which is a revision of the ISO 9806, was released in collaboration between the Technical Committee 180 for Solar Energy and CEN Technical Committee 312 for Solar Thermal Systems and Components. This revision was released in 2017. So in 2018, a questionnaire was developed and distributed to many quality assessment bodies and key players throughout the globe to see if their countries were satisfied with the new revised version of this standard, if they are planning to adopt this standard at the national level, and if they had any recommendations or suggestions to improve this standard. Covering all aspects needed to collect the feedback from all institutions about the adoption of these new standards and any recommendation, as we said before, to improve it. Mainly the responses received were from 35 countries. 84 responses were received. And this slide or this figure show the results and the initial analysis of the feedback collected. We can see here how likely the countries were to adopt the standards. So many countries adopted the standards, mainly in the countries members in CEN. but other countries suggested some alternation to ISO 9806 in order to increase its adoption and to be able to be adopted in several other countries. This study gathered so much valuable information about systems and markets existing in each country. Okay. So the study was gathering many valuable informations about the systems and markets existing in each country. Below is the link. So this link can guide you to have the final report for more insights in details about the status and results of this study. Okay, for the second objective related to developing two levels of certification that can fit the developing and the developed countries, if you can say. The new models of certification or the objective. So this objective was to develop two different certification schemes that can fit, for example, the countries without very sophisticated quality infrastructure. For example, with the lower requirement on test labs and certification bodies and inspection bodies and so on. So to do so, or for the introduction of two levels of certification, two certification schemes existed in Europe and MENA region, which are respectively Solar Academy and SHC, were chosen to study the possibility of harmonizing the tests and the procedural, the test and certification procedures between the two programs to see if there is any possibility to harmonize those programs. This was mainly because, for example, SHC, the Arab or the solar certification scheme of MENA region was inspired from the European program Solar Academy. So this paper was prepared by SHC team to compare the similarities and differences of the both programs. So the paper presents some possible benefits from the harmonization of SHC and Solar Academy. It compares also differences between SHC and Solar Academy in terms of procedures and technicalities referred to the scheme rules, and to discuss and highlight the main differences. For the comparison of the differences, so of the expected benefits from the harmonization of SHC and Solar Academy of the global certification scheme GSCN, those benefits can be summarized in three major ways. So we can speak, for example, for the technical benefits, which are to disseminate the quality awareness among the different players and stakeholders in the field, to fortify and upgrade the regional quality infrastructure, mainly test labs, to enhance the knowledge and the technology transfer between the European and the Arab stakeholders, and to increase the capacity building. If we speak for business-wise, so we can say that many benefits are expected from this harmonization. We can, for example, expect to facilitate the product trade between the two regions, to promote the market growth, to increase the competitiveness, and to fasten the technology learning curve. under the umbrella of the Global Certification Initiative or Network. Also, we can expect to add integrity and comprehensiveness to this initiative, to have many institutions and participants from MENA region, to facilitate the knowledge exchange from and to MENA region, and to mainly eliminate quality gaps and in the emerging markets. For the main differences between the two programs, mainly for the technicalities, three main axes were identified. Here we can speak, for example, about the product scope, accreditation requirements, and the specific differences between in some of the procedures. We will go deeply and speak in details about those three main axes of differences. For the non-technical differences, we can, for example, talk about the involvement of different stakeholders in the both programs, and the interaction among stakeholders and conformity bodies, mainly in MENA region, because there is here we can identify a very significant difference between the both programs. Going back to the product scope, so currently HMC scheme cover two kind of products: solar collectors as defined in the ISO 9806, and the solar water heaters system as defined in the ISO 9459 in the part 2 and the part 5. While solar K-mark scheme cover more products, for example, the factory-made systems, the custom-built systems as defined in the European standard 12977. Solar water heater stores and solar combi stores and even control equipments. Regarding the procedures and the accreditation requirements, for solar K-mark, the accreditation according to ISO 17025, for example, for test labs is required. And this is similar, for example, for the certification bodies and inspectors. For SHC scheme, a grace period was given for the different involved entities till the 31st December of 2020 to be ready to adopt SHC at the national level according to the international requirements and standards. But currently, to adopt SHC, the accreditation is not required till the 1st of January 2021. So the accreditation will be required to adopt the scheme at the national level. For the interaction among stakeholders, so here we can identify a difference between the two schemes. Program. Some regional organizations working in the field of energy and quality. So RUCRI, in collaboration with the League of Arab States, mainly the Energy Department of the League of Arab States and the Arab Industrial and Mining Organizations, worked in collaboration to develop the program. For solar K-mark, it was an industry-based program developed in collaboration between many basically industrial stakeholders like the European Solar Thermal Industrial Federation and the CEN committee. In solar K-mark, there is a strong and a big interrelation among all stakeholders due to the active participation of all of them in those committees and those industrial federations. So mainly to conclude and to summarize the outcomes of the subtask C regarding the introduction of 2 levels of certification. Having different certification levels can bring various and technical economical benefits, like we explain, for manufacturers, for industrials, for mainly the decision makers, and even for the involved bodies. Also, the harmonization can contribute to the national dynamic in the solar certification field. And if we can also summarize the main, or to highlight the main differences between the SHC Solar Academy program, which were chosen to study the possibility of harmonization. Mainly we can speak about product scopes, the accreditation requirements, stakeholders' engagement and involvement, and the interrelation among them. That's it, and thank you for your attention.
So thank you very much, Khalid, for an excellent presentation. I think we will now move to the question and answer period. So Arabella, any direction to the attendees?
Yes, the attendees, if you have questions for any of our panelist speakers, you can see on the screen, please send in your questions. We've already received some. For sending in the question, please make sure who you are addressing. So please say, this is a question for, and then please keep your question short and precise, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. And Shawn will moderate that Q&A section now. Thank you.
Yes, so thanks to everyone who submitted questions. We will start here. Forgive me, I have to open this up. Okay. Arabella, I'm not, oh, okay. I was not able to see all the questions. Can you start with the first one? Oh, no, I was able to do it. Very good. Okay, so the first question that we will take, we will address this to Jan-Erik, and the question is this: will you work on heat transfer fluids tests for certifications?
I think that would be a very good idea. I'm quite sure that there's quite a few test procedures here and there, and it would be a very good idea to harmonize these test procedures and also make some certification on this product. So it's just to go ahead if you have interest and have some ideas how to do this. Address your national standardization committee with your ideas and try to get interest also from other national committees and start the work.
So does anyone else wish to make comments on this? Okay. Moving to the next question. This is again to Jan-Erik. The question is, can you identify some of the key reasons for the lack of interest in standardization work by industries, especially the ones from developing countries?
Yes, maybe. I think if I start in Europe, we have the latest years, we have some problems with the market, and this is maybe a problem for the manufacturers, so they do maybe not have resources to participate in other things, such as national standards and harmonization of certification. But it would be a very good idea because it could open up new markets, so they could enter new markets with at a low cost. For the developing countries, I think maybe that's could be in general maybe small manufacturers operating on the local markets, the local national market without a big interest in export for the time being. But if they want to develop, they should actually enter this standardization work, and if they want to expand their business.
Okay, and similar question, related question, I should say. Again, John Eric, they asked if you can identify the benefits industries in developing countries have if they participate more actively in the standardization work, period.
Yes, so they should, of course, participate in the national standardization, so they have some tests in their own country to prove that their products has a certain quality, because it's important with some quality, so you do not enter the market with bad quality products, and the solar thermal will have a bad reputation. So it's an issue on good quality products, and for this you need some good tests. And again, if they want to go on other markets, they should also have interest in international standards and test procedures to see what they have to fulfill to enter other markets.
Maybe I can add something to this. Just 2 sentences. First of all, I experienced that sometimes countries which are just on the edge to introduce standards for their countries covering those products sometimes have the fear that their local conditions are not represented well in the standard. So that is one thing, to have this feedback into the standardization groups responsible for revisions, to just let them know what is the doubts or the fear that it could not be done well. So it's very important, this involvement at this early stage, so to understand what is in the standard already, and also to give questions and remarks backwards into this committee, so that the committee can react. And the second sentence, as it is a lot of travel expenses to join those meetings, and that might be a barrier for some countries with not the right infrastructure behind that as well. I just want to mention that at our last meeting, some representative from ISO community declared that they can support travel expenses to join those meetings for persons who cannot afford that by themselves. So that might be also an interesting input.
So this is a good addition. Does anyone else wish to comment?
This is Harold speaking.
Oh,
I
Harold,
can give a
please.
short comment to what Corbinian mentioned. And I think it's an important point that he addressed, that ISO is willing to give support for travel expenses. And as I am also a consultant in several countries, I already draw the attention of some countries to this ISO support. And then it turned out that this ISO support is only available for participating countries. So that means in ISO there are 2 status. One is observer and the other is participating. And only if your country is a participating country, you can get support for travel expenses from ISO.
This is a good clarification. Thank you, Harold. Okay, so the next question, again, Jan Erik. The question is this: is there to task 57 regarding solar thermal cooling?
So the answer is no. Actually, we are dealing with collectors, of course, solar collectors, which can be used for solar cooling, but we are not dealing with specific cooling equipment or cooling systems. There are other tasks within IEA SHC dealing with cooling and also solar cooling, and also looking into test procedures. So I recommend you to go to the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling website and find these tasks on solar cooling. There are some very good documents you can find there, and this could be basis for some standardization on specifically solar cooling for the future. There will be a follow-up task it looks like on the task 57, so it could be an item or an issue or topic in this follow-up task, but I don't know now if it will be, but if there's interest, it could be.
Okay, does anyone else wish to add to this? Okay, Shawn Erik, you're off the hot seat for a moment. So Dr. Druk, you're next. The question here is that are there also activities for standardization of solar thermal adapters for PV collectors for the realization of PVT?
Yes, PVT collectors are partly covered by ISO 9806 2017. And to this extent, they are also part of the certification schemes, because certification scheme is based on ISO 9806.
So just to add to that, my understanding is that the portion in 9806 only covers the solar thermal aspects of the PVT, and the PV portions are not addressed. Is this correct? Perhaps Dr. Kramer.
If I may, yeah, you're correct. As Harald just mentioned, basically it's possible to have a solar key mark for a PVT product. As I understood the question, it was rather not focusing on a fixed PVT product, but on an add-on product to be clipped on existing PV installations, and that is really a delicate question. And let's say there are some people thinking about how this could be handled in future, but there is no official group, to my knowledge, who is explicitly working on covering those add-on products and how to handle that they are a combination of products with various PV, let's say. So it's a very tricky question for certification issue because you do not exactly know where those products and how those products will be applied. So it's hard to certify upfront. Good question. I would be happy to work on that, but I think it's not really ongoing at the moment.
And again, this is Shawn. Just to add to that, your point is well taken. This has been a challenge in the U.S. as well. We are looking within the U.S. standards, SRCC Standard 100, at adding provisions regarding PVTs to address the integration with PV because of some of the points that were mentioned by Dr. Kramer. And this is an area of significant interest at present, and we are establishing a working group to address this in the U.S. Perhaps we can report back in the future what progress we make. So I'll now move on. And on the next one, I believe perhaps this one should go to Dr. Kramer, but of course anyone can weigh in. The question is, how will new advanced solar thermal non-tracking concentrating collectors generating temperatures of 200 C be tested and certified?
Well, in those, let's say, both big certification schemes like SRCC and KeyMark basically are applicable for those products for the certification part, and those are based on the ISO standard, or indirectly based on the ISO standard. They share that. So the ISO 2017 version and also the 13 version included concentrating solar collectors. What is a recent improvement of the standard version 2017 is that there is a parameter factor which goes with the temperature by 4, which is especially helpful to describe concentrating or, let's say, high temperature operating collectors. Basically, there is, so to speak, so to answer, the ISO 9806 ready to be applied for those collectors. In details of testing, this is sometimes a challenge, because sometimes those products are built in bigger size, and then it is complicated to bring them to a laboratory. For this, most of the schemes allow for in situ tests, and in situ tests can be also applied by the standard, or the standard can be applied in situ, but it's a little bit tricky because then you have to interfere with the operating conditions in situ, and that is not always possible or not always cheap. So in the end, it's a little bit more out of the direct path of the application of the standard, but it's definitely in the scope, and it's possible.
Okay. We are running out of time, unfortunately, but so I'm going to address the next question to Khalid. The question here is, what are the roles of universities in making good awareness among students? Do we have any good student programs that may have a good impact on the future?
Okay. Actually, to be frank, so our interaction with the universities were limited at the starting of the project or the program. So we had a collaboration with the Stuttgart University, for example, with Mr. Harald Drogt, who was one of the initiator and the developer of the program. For the Arab region, I think maybe we are negotiating to have one collaboration with university in Tunisia, where they have a master program for students willing to work in the field of solar certification for solar thermal products. Hopefully, we can have more collaboration with many universities and to have such initiatives to raise the awareness of quality certification and quality assurance among the students. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So with this, unfortunately, oh, please, of course.
Yeah, short remark. So this is just to say that this could be and also a topic for the follow-up task to do some work and cooperate with the universities. I think that's a good idea.
Very good. Well, thank you for the comments. We have to wrap up at this point. We will indeed pass along the remaining questions to the panelists for them to follow up. Give my apologies and to the attendees, but these were excellent questions. I want to express my sincere appreciation to our panelists today. Certainly, we had excellent presentations, and I think that's borne out by the questions received. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Arabella.
Yes, thank you very much, Shawn. And thank you to all the audience for sending in all of your questions. We received many questions. Unfortunately, there isn't always that much time, but we will take care to forward the questions to the panelist speakers and to publish any answers we are receiving. So your questions will certainly get processed. For this webinar, there will be a recording, and this recording, as well as the presentations you have just seen by our great speakers, they will be online on the ISES webinar homepage 1 to 2 days after today's webinar. So in the coming days, you can come back to the ISES webinar homepage, and there you can find the recording as well as the presentations. They will be public there for a few days, and then they will be moved to the ISES membership archive. This is a special membership benefit where you have unlimited access to all past webinars and the recordings. I too want to very much thank all of you for your participation. We had great presentations. I'm very pleased that all of our panelist speakers took the time and made the effort to join us today. We really appreciate this very much on behalf of you, the audience, and of course for ISES. We welcome any feedback you have, so please write to us at public.relations@ises.org if you have any comments or questions about the webinar or maybe other ISES events. And you can also find us on all social media channels. And there is also going to be a survey that will be sent to you after the webinar. So please, if you have the time, fill in the little survey. This really helps ISES to provide you with more great webinars as the one today. And with this, I wish all of you a very nice day all around the world, and take care, and I hope to see all of you back for the next webinar. Goodbye.